event on film, American flags and a giant banner of George Washington sandwiched between huge swastikas. Radio Diaries brings us this audio history.
Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Christian Americans, it's my very great privilege to welcome you.
Madison Square Garden was the big arena in New York at the time. Hockey games, boxing matches. The week before the rally, there was the Westminster Dog Show. My name is Arnie Bernstein. I'm a historian and author of the book Swastika Nation.
Audience, attention! I pledge allegiance.
The rally opened with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America.
20,000 people strong stood up, held their hands aloft in the Nazi salute, and said the pledge to the American flag.
With liberty and justice for all.
Tailors, businessmen, blue collar, white collar, they came wearing their Nazi armbands and having pennants in their hands. It looked like any kind of political rally, only with a Nazi twist.
Bund members, our boys and girls, fellow white Americans, and other non-parasitic guests.
The rally was explicitly anti-Semitic. They demand a white Gentile America. They denounced Roosevelt as Rosenfeld, to say that Roosevelt was in the pocket of the rich Jews. My name is Sarah Churchwell. I'm a cultural historian and the author of Behold America. One of the speakers was Gerhard Wilhelm Kunz, who was the public relations director for the Burns, and he gave an explicitly white supremacist vision of America.
American lawmakers generate principles, promulgated laws forbidding intermarriage between white and black, yellow, brown, and red inhabitants. We have Jim Crow laws and a complicated system of immigration quotas. It has then always been very much American, to protect the Aryan character of this nation.
One of the things that they tried to do was to say that basically this is what America has always been, and that this is what the Founding Fathers would have supported.
We are not preaching racism, but race recognition and the will for preservation of our own.
My name is Brett Siciliano, and my grandfather was at the Nazi rally. He was a 26-year-old plumber. His name was Isidore Greenbaum. He felt it was his duty as an American, as a Jew, and as a curious New Yorker to assess the situation. And he snuck into the rally.
The only ever homeless parasite is the Jew.
He was in the very, very back, and he sat there, he listened, and I believe the rally was about 3 hours long.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fritz Kuhn.
The pinnacle of the night was the last speaker of the evening, Fritz Kuhn.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Americans, you all have heard of me through the Jewish-controlled press.
Kuhn was the leader of the German-American Bund, and in essence, he wanted to be the Hitler of America.
Wake up, you Aryan, Nordics, and Christians, to demand that our government shall be returned to the American people who founded it.
My grandpa watched 20,000 people cheering, raising their hands, saluting this man in the Heil Hitler salute. And he was just amazed. And so he slowly worked his way to the front. I remember him telling me that there was one thing he said about the Jews and how they're like cockroaches, and my grandfather said he lost it.
The department that's warning you.
My grandpa just muscled his way through the guards that were up front, jumped up on the stage, and he yelled, "Down with Hitler." A bunch of the guards, the security, jumped on my grandfather, who started punching and kicking him, pawing at him, and pulling his pants down. And they were getting cheers. And the New York police ran from the other side of the stage, and the police pulled my grandfather off to safety. They had a black eye and a broken nose, but he said he would have done it again.
That fund is open to you. provided you are sincere, of good character, of Aryan stock. Join Free America.
When the rally wrapped up, everybody just thrust their arms in the air and joined coolly screaming, "Free America! Free America!"
This rally in February 1939 was really the turning point for the Bund. As soon as the United States entered the war, all of these fascist groups were discredited and disbanded.
The Bund is largely forgotten, but there's something they tapped into that is part of America. We still see elements of it today. They may not be the German-American Bund, you know, the 1978 attempt by Nazis to march and strike the Ku Klux Klan in the 1960s. We saw it at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. 80 years later, the philosophy is still there. And all these groups maintain that they are patriotic Americans. And this is the America that they see.
After the rally, Isidore Greenbaum, the protester who jumped up on stage, was arrested for disorderly conduct and fined $25 for disrupting the rally. He later enlisted in the Navy and fought in World War II.
You can see archival footage from this American Nazi rally in the documentary A Night at the Garden. This story was produced by Sarah Kate Kramer of Radio Diaries, with Joe Richmond and Nellie Gillis, and edited by Ben Shapiro and Deborah George. You can hear a longer version on the Radio Diaries podcast. Thanks to Andy Lancet and the WNYC Archives for providing archival audio.
All Things Considered is a production of NPR News, which is solely responsible for its content. Transcripts for the stories you hear today are available for free tomorrow when you visit the story page on npr.org. Listeners like you make this and other programs possible. Thanks for supporting public radio. This is NPR.
Marketplace is coming up next here on WNYC. Tonight, tax prep services often advertise refunds as a selling point.
Oh, it's like a birthday present, you know? Somebody sent you money.
But critics say that refund was your money to begin with. A look at how the tax prep industry attracts customers coming up next on Marketplace. All Things Considered continues at 7 o'clock. 29 degrees now, light snow falling. We have a winter weather advisory in effect until tomorrow morning. Tonight, the snow is expected to mix with sleet and rain.
WNYC supporters include Kiss Me Kate on Broadway for a limited engagement. Kelly O'Hara, Will Chase, and Corbin Bleu star in this showbiz musical featuring songs like Too Darn Hot and So in Love. Kiss Me Kate, now in previews. Tickets at roundabouttheater.org.
If you believe democracy requires a free press, your station is WNYC, 93.9 FM and AM 820, NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Rice University, working to achieve transformative discoveries and developing leaders who dare to disrupt conventional paradigms. Rice University, unconventional wisdom. More at rice.edu/future.
What's in a word, you ask? Oh, plenty, says the Federal Reserve. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by C3, addressing the world's most challenging problems at the convergence of artificial intelligence, IoT, and elastic cloud computing. Learn more at c3.ai. And by Certified Financial Planner Professionals, trained in providing holistic financial planning in the client's best interest. Let's make a plan.org.
In Washington, D.C., today I'm Con Risdall. It is Wednesday, the 20th of February. Good as always to have you along, everybody. but in the language of the Fed in a minute. But we are going to start today in the history might not repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes section of the broadcast, Campaign Finance Edition. It's brought to us by the senator from Vermont, the once and presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. You might remember back during the 2016 campaign, Sanders made much of his small dollar fundraising prowess.
Anybody here know what the average contribution is? Right, $27.
Sanders announced yesterday that he is in for the Democratic nomination in 2020, and then announced this morning that within 24 hours he had raised $6 million from 225,000 people, which works out to, when you do the math, yes, an average donation of $26.67 apiece. Senator Kamala Harris, a couple of weeks ago, basically the same thing, slightly less money, $1.5 million in the relative blink of an eye. All of which is to say, this is going to be an expensive race, and a long one, too, especially for the donors, as Marketplace's Kimberly Adams reports.
Campaign fundraising typically determines how much ad time a candidate can afford, how much staff they can hire. But this early in the race, the money is about positioning.
In a crowded field, one of the ways that these presidential hopefuls are distinguishing themselves is by demonstrating the breadth of their support.
Amy Allison is president of the political network She the People.
It's just a way to measure if the campaigns will be around long enough to see Labor Day this year.
And Democrats aren't the only ones making a statement with their opening numbers. President Trump hasn't stopped fundraising, and his $130 million campaign war chest sends its own message. Jennifer Nicole Victor is a political scientist at George Mason University.
One of the strategies he's trying to pursue there is to scare off an opponent who might seek to challenge him in a primary by showing how formidable he is as a candidate and as a fundraiser.
Highly coveted small donors have been turning out for both sides, and Victor says they're likely to keep giving what they can, prompted by emails, speeches, and news events. But for the big donors, folks who regularly give thousands of dollars,
they're going to be getting called repeatedly throughout 2019 and 2020.
Jennifer Herwig is a political sociologist at Stony Brook University who studies political donors.
The large donors with such a wide Democratic field may start experiencing some fatigue with such a long race and so many candidates to potentially support.
Because those donors are probably on everyone's list. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
We detour now to matters economic and linguistic. The Federal Reserve released the minutes of its most recent meeting today, the one at the end of January, at which Chair Jay Powell and his colleagues made it pretty clear they were willing to stop raising interest rates for a while, given some signs the economy might be slowing. That was a big change for the Fed, and we wanted to make sure we were reading the central bank's signals the right way, so we reached out to a professional for some help. Jessica Rett teaches linguistics at UCLA. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to read you a couple of things here, and then I need you to tell me what you, as a person who studies this stuff, what you think the Federal Reserve means, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, so at their meeting in December, and we're talking about this again because the meetings came out today from the January meeting, the most recent meeting, but back in December, the Federal Reserve said this about economic activity in this country. It said, economic activity has been rising at a strong rate, okay? Rising at a strong rate. And then in their meeting in January, they said economic activity has been rising at a solid rate. Can you help me understand what Jay Powell and the gang at the Fed are trying to do here?
So that sounds to me like a slight weakening. Strong is a positive evaluative adjective, so it suggests that we've got a positive judgment about what's happening. So if I have a student in a course and I say their progression is strong, then it suggests I feel positively towards that progression. On the other hand, solid progression is not necessarily a positive one. It could be something I'm not particularly happy about, but at least minimally it's consistent. So the two adjectives focus on different components of the rise.
Yeah, and you could make the case that the Fed maybe is not so happy with the way things are going right now. Hence the solid. Let me try another one on here. Again, from the December statement, it was talking about interest rate increases this time, and the Fed said the committee judges that some further gradual increases in interest rates are going to be necessary. That was December, and now this past month in January, they said the committee will be patient as it determines what interest rates ought to be. Decipher that for me.
So that seems like some more subtle weakening in three respects. So the first one is a statement of the fact that they want some increases. But there's three sort of hedging or weakening components of the updated version. They're going to be patient as they determine what future adjustments to the target range may be appropriate. We're sort of not going to come down in a position of whether or not there's going to be a change and whether there'll be an increase or a decrease. When you put all of these things together, it sort of amounts to the difference between the sentence, I know how much coffee Kai wants, which is a sort of straightforward declaration of what the facts on the ground are, versus I wonder whether Kai might want coffee, which is significantly more hedged and less informative. So they know what they're doing over there.
Yeah, well, okay, so first of all, Kai definitely wants coffee, but second of all, I mean, they must spend an excruciating amount of time on this wordplay, and I don't mean that, you know, in a pejorative sense, but clearly they're very intentional about literally the words.
Yeah, I'm actually a little impressed with the minutes. It seems as though they're sort of, they know what they want to do and they know how to do it very subtly, which is more than I can say for a lot of us.
Yeah, well, yes. Do you think, actually, and this is a little bit sideways, and I don't know how closely you follow the business press, but do you think we spend too much time trying to do the Kremlinology of what the Fed is talking about?
Oh, goodness. Well, what else would we do with our time? I think reading tea leaves was fun, and they've given us a lot to work with here, so it sounds like a useful exercise to me.
Jessica Red is an associate professor of linguistics at UCLA. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
On Wall Street today, a whole lot of bouncing around. Little net change, though. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. No pressure here, but it is something less than 2 months till taxes are due. A lot of people have filed already, of course, but a lot of them are none too happy. First of all, taxes. Also, though, because their refunds are down 9% on average from last year. That's according to the Internal Revenue Service. And it's interesting because most people actually got a net tax cut in the 2017 overhaul. To be clear here, if you got a refund, it means you gave the government too much money. You can avoid that by adjusting your withholding, how much your employer takes out of your paycheck and sends straight to the IRS. But people have come to love and count on their refunds, and as Marketplace's Mariel Segarra explains, so too has the rest of the economy.
Maybe you've seen this ad recently. It's from ATC Income Tax, based in Georgia. 3 couples are sitting around a dinner table, and they're bragging about their tax refunds.
How much we talking? 4? 5? 7?
That's more than we got, baby.
Oh my God.
This is Justin McCullough. He's a CPA in Belmore, New York. To him, this ad represents everything that's wrong with the way we think about taxes.
Refunds aren't cool, right? Like, that's your money. They're making this seem that a refund is something magical. It's your money.
As McCullough is constantly telling his clients, and anyone else who'll listen, a refund is just money you overpaid in taxes. It is an interest-free loan to the government. It's also something the multi-billion-dollar tax preparation industry uses as a selling point.
We're letting our clients walk away thinking that we're great because of the refund we get them. It's bull, it's garbage.
And yet, judging by the widespread dismay over what's happened to refunds this year, people have gotten attached to them. How did we get here? Let's go back to the early 1940s. The U.S. had just entered World War II, and the government needed money to fund the war effort. So Congress expanded the income tax. No longer was it only the really rich who had to pay.
I paid my income tax today.
The Treasury Department even commissioned Irving Berlin to write a song reminding people that paying taxes was their patriotic duty.
I'm very glad to pay.
The government couldn't bank on patriotism alone, so it created withholding. Employers started deducting taxes from workers' paychecks and sending that money to the government. But the math was tricky, and by the late 40s, the government was giving back about $2 billion to taxpayers a year. The tax refund was born, and along with it, a huge marketing opportunity. Back then, Ed Barton's grandfather owned a car dealership in Hinton, West Virginia. And like a lot of car dealers, he was always coming up with gimmicks to get people in the door.
He actually gave away 2 ponies to 2 little girls who dragged their fathers in to look at the new 57 Ford.
So Garton, who's an auto historian, says the tax refund became yet another way to sell cars.
Dealerships were savvy, and they were essentially saying, we know you've got money coming to you soon, going to be jingling in your pocket. You probably need a new car.
By the 60s, all kinds of businesses were trying to cash in on refund season. Come spend your refund on a new couch, or a color TV, or a side of beef, 67 cents a pound. And along the way, refunds became a part of our lives. David Williams is Chief Tax Officer at Intuit, which owns the tax preparation software TurboTax. He also spent years at the IRS.
I've yet to see anything that will dissuade taxpayers from wanting and demanding a significant refund.
Or it's like a birthday present, you know? Somebody sent you money.
Rachel Davies lives in Virginia, and yes, she knows the refund is her own money. But like nearly 3/4 of taxpayers, she and her husband are happy to have the government hold on to that money for them. They get back a few $1,000s every year.
I know it's not the best practice, and so it's hard to admit, but I'm not very disciplined with the money that's in the checking account.
Over the years, the Davies have used their refund to buy new tires and season passes to an amusement park. But they just did their taxes, and it turns out they won't get a refund this year. In fact, they owe money. I'm Marielle Segura for Marketplace.
If you want to see some of those ads, or maybe read the sheet music from that Irving Berlin song about income taxes, we got them online, marketplace.org. From Big Coal today, a decision by Glencore, the Anglo-Swiss mining conglomerate, that it's going to cap production at 150 million metric tons of coal a year, which is, it has to be pointed out, a little bit more coal than the company mined last year. But the announcement is a big deal, and it's a bit surprising, too, because Glencore has until now been bullish on coal, saying it would keep driving companies' profits, supplying developing economies in Asia. So, Marketplace's Mitchell Hartman explains the 180.
Over the past few years, Glencore has been pumping up its coal mining operations, which short-term profit-wise has kind of made sense, says Costa Samaras at Carnegie Mellon University.
Demand is still very strong in India and in other parts of the world. Last year, coal shipments were more than 1 billion tons for the first time ever.
So why is Glencore now pulling back?
They're responding to institutional investors, looking at the writing on the wall and seeing increased risk from assets that won't be viable in a low-carbon world that has increased appetite to deal with climate change.
These are long-term financial risks, like increased regulation that favors renewable energy. Also, climate change lawsuits against fossil fuel companies. In the long run, Adele Morris at the Brookings Institution says market players are signaling
the grim outlook for coal reflected in no new investment in coal-fired power plants. They expect eventually to have their greenhouse gas emissions curtailed.
Meanwhile, Glencore's plan to cap coal production could have an upside for some U.S. producers that want to ship more to Asia, where demand is still strong, says Ian Lang at the Colorado School of Mines.
You know, this is good news for them, as if they can get to that Pacific market, they might have less competition.
But that won't be easy. New coal export terminals need to be built in coastal states like California and Washington, where opposition based on the risk of further damage to the climate is strong. I'm Mitchell Hartman for Marketplace.
The same kinds of asthma triggers that exist in homes also exist in daycare centers.
And cleaning them up ain't cheap. But first, sure, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's up 63 points today, about 0.25%, 25,954. The Nasdaq gained 2 points, that's less than 0.1%, 74.89. The S&P 500 moved up 4 points, about 0.1%, 27.84. Mitchell Hartman was telling us about Glencore. Shares up 2.5% today. Samsung announced the new Galaxy Fold phone today. The screen folds in half and works like a tablet when unfolded. Shares at Korea-based Samsung are not easy to buy in the United States. It doesn't trade on American exchanges, but you can get the new Galaxy starting in April. But get this, price tag almost $2,000. As for Samsung's biggest competitor, Apple, shares up 0.6% today. Bond prices fell. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note rose to 2.64%. And you're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by T. Rowe Price, offering a strategic investing approach that examines opportunities firsthand. Since 1937, T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence. And by Personal Capital, helping over 1 million people plan for retirement with their online financial tools. You can download the Personal Capital app to link and see all your accounts in one place. Get to know your money. And by Invest Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, a European location with a skilled, agile workforce focused on results. More at investni.com. Support for